My name is Emily Johnson, and what I'm about to share is something that shook me to the core. For years, I had always thought of myself as someone who understood her family completely, my husband, Michael, and my son, Daniel. We lived in a modest but warm home in the suburbs, the kind of place where neighbors waved from their porches and kids rode their bikes until the streetlights came on. On the outside, we looked like the picture-perfect American family. But one night, when my husband wasn't home, something happened that changed the way I looked at my son forever. Michael was a hardworking man. He traveled often for his job in sales, and that particular evening, he had to drive out of town for a meeting that would keep him overnight. I didn't think much of it. It wasn't unusual. Daniel, who was 18 at the time, had just graduated from high school and was preparing for college. He was at that age where he was caught between boyhood and manhood, still under my roof but eager to spread his wings. That evening, I cooked us a simple dinner: grilled chicken, roasted vegetables, and mashed potatoes. I figured Daniel would probably prefer pizza or something more fun, but I wanted to share a real meal with him since it was just the two of us. As we sat down at the table, I noticed something about him that made me pause. He wasn't his usual self. Normally, Daniel would chat about his friends, his plans, or even just some random thing he'd seen online. But that night, he was quieter, more thoughtful, almost as though something heavy was resting on his shoulders. I asked him gently, "Danny, is everything okay?" He gave me a small smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Yeah, Mom. Just thinking about stuff." I didn't push. I knew my son well enough to recognize when he wasn't ready to open up. Instead, I let the conversation flow toward lighter topics: college applications, the upcoming football game he wanted to watch, the new video game his friend had been raving about. Still, in the back of my mind, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. After dinner, Daniel insisted on helping me with the dishes. That was unusual in itself. Most nights, I had to remind him 3 times before he'd grudgingly load the dishwasher. But that night, he was quick to roll up his sleeves and scrub alongside me. We worked in silence for a while until I finally broke it by saying, "You know, you can always talk to me about anything. I mean it, even if it's hard." He stopped scrubbing for a second, his hands still submerged in the soapy water, and he looked at me with an expression I'll never forget. It was a mix of fear, vulnerability, and something deeper, something I couldn't quite name at the time. Then he sighed and said, "I know, Mom. I just don't want to disappoint you." Those words pierced my heart. Disappoint me? Daniel had never given me a reason to feel that way. Sure, he wasn't perfect, no teenager is, but he was kind, thoughtful, and hardworking in his own way. I put a hand on his shoulder and told him, "You could never disappoint me. Whatever it is, I'd rather hear it from you than find out later." But Daniel just nodded and went back to scrubbing. Later that evening, after we'd cleaned up, I settled in the living room with a book. Daniel disappeared upstairs to his room, and I assumed that was the end of it. But about an hour later, I heard his footsteps on the stairs. He came into the living room, holding something in his hand. At first, I thought it was just his phone, but when he got closer, I realized it was a framed photo, the one of me, him, and Michael at his high school graduation. He sat down across from me and stared at the photo for a long moment before speaking. His voice was soft, almost trembling. "Mom, can I tell you something? But you have to promise not to tell Dad. At least not yet." I felt my chest tighten, but I nodded. "Of course. Whatever you say stays between us." What came out of his mouth next left me shocked. Not in a scandalous way, not in a way that broke me, but in a way that made me realize how much my son had been carrying inside. "Mom," he began, "I don't think I want to go to college right away. Everyone keeps telling me it's what I'm supposed to do, that it's the only way to succeed, but I'm not sure it's right for me. I don't even know who I am yet. And I'm scared Dad's going to think I'm a failure if I don't go." The words tumbled out of him like a flood. I sat there stunned. Not because he didn't want to go to college. That's not the part that shocked me. What shocked me was the raw honesty in his voice, the weight of his fear, and the fact that he had been holding this in for so long. Daniel wasn't just talking about college. He was talking about life, about the crushing expectations that had been building on his shoulders. I set my book aside, crossed the room, and sat beside him. "Danny," I said gently, "do you know how proud I am of you? College isn't the only way to figure out your future. If you need time to breathe, to work, to explore who you are, that's okay. You don't have to have all the answers right now." He looked at me, tears welling in his eyes. "But Dad," I took his hand, "your dad loves you, even if he has a hard time showing it sometimes. He wants the best for you, that's all. But you don't have to live your life just to make us happy. You need to make yourself happy too." Daniel leaned into me then, resting his head on my shoulder, and for the first time in years, I felt like my little boy was back. I wrapped my arms around him, and in that moment, all the worry, all the tension I'd felt earlier melted away. I was shocked, not because of what he said, but because I had almost missed it. I had almost missed the chance to really hear him. That night, long after Daniel had gone to bed, I lay awake thinking about how easy it is for parents to assume they know their children, when in reality, those children are carrying entire worlds inside them. Worlds of fear, of hope, of dreams and doubts. If Michael had been home, maybe the moment wouldn't have happened. Maybe Daniel wouldn't have felt safe enough to open up. And then I would have kept on believing everything was fine, while my son silently struggled. The next morning, when Michael called to check in, I didn't mention the conversation. Not yet. Daniel had asked me to keep it between us, and I wanted to honor that. But I also knew that, in time, we would have to bring Michael into the loop. This wasn't just about Daniel's future, it was about our family, about learning to really listen to one another. And from that night on, I made myself a promise. Never again would I let the busyness of life or the comfort of routine blind me to what my son was really feeling. Because sometimes, the moments that shock us the most are the ones that teach us who our children truly are.